It really wasn't until the mid-80s and the 90s that black shows made it to TV, giving black actors a chance to become leads in TV shows. The 90s black TV shows proved to be an excellent opportunity to break stereotypes. Audiences could look into the lives and experiences of black people, given that these shows were centered on black characters. 90s black TV shows were funny and became a significant influence for shows that would come later, and even shows on TV today. The programs turned black actors and comedians into celebrities who remain household names to this day. So, what are some of the iconic shows ever, and what became of them? Let's get it on. The Cosby Show, 1984-1992. September 20th will be the 40th anniversary of the first episode of The Cosby Show, also known as the one that was shot on a completely different set from the rest of the series. And it seems like every time the show has an anniversary, it gets a little more fondly remembered and a little closer to classic status. That wasn't guaranteed. Its immense success naturally sparked a backlash, especially when The Simpsons went up against the declining Cosby on Thursdays, and it seemed like Bill and Bart were facing off in a generational war. It never made a lot of noise in syndication, though fans couldn't tell you why. Other family sitcoms and other black family sitcoms like The Jeffersons and Fresh Prince of BelAir seemed to have more of an impact in reruns. The show was also sometimes criticized or mocked for its celebration of wealth and its emphasis on Cosby's own personal obsessions, from the importance of college to the greatness of elderly jazz musicians. It seemed for a while like it might be remembered as a show that was very popular at the time, but was a relic of the 80s, like NBC's other family hit of the era, Family Ties. Instead, its reputation quietly seems to have grown, both artistically and socially. It isn't quite remembered as a masterpiece like the other big hit of its production company, Roseanne, but it inspires a similar kind of reverence as a show that you could never make today. It helps that the early seasons of The Cosby Show are the best, so when you watch it from the beginning, it puts its best foot forward. The pilot features probably the most famous and iconic scene of the series, in which Cosby confronts his son over his bad report card and mocks Theo's argument that he should just be accepted and loved for the underachiever he is. It's also that, like Seinfeld, the uniqueness of The Cosby Show is only truly visible in hindsight, when you notice that even though lots of shows thought they were imitating it, there's never really been another sitcom like it. Everyone talks about how the sitcom was considered dead until Cosby came along, and how he revitalized the form by getting away from bumbling dad stereotypes and presenting confident, smart parents. But Cosby did more than that. He stripped the whole sitcom form down to the bone in a way you'd never seen before and haven't seen since. He supposedly told his writers that he wanted no conflict and no jokes, which seems like a weird thing to say about a scripted comedy, but accurately describes what many of the early episodes are like. The building blocks of storytelling, like conflict and resolution, are tossed out in favor of long scenes of characters not doing much. A second season episode called Denise's Friend is a good example of this. There is a plot, sort of, in the first half of the episode, where Denise has a friend, a young stationtash who consults Dr. Huxtable about a problem, but is afraid to tell her parents about it. This situation is resolved off-camera during the commercial break. The friend is fine, we're told. Most of the rest of the episode takes place in the Huxtable living room, and consists of a scene where the Huxtables explain to their kids, and, by extension, the kids watching at home, that they shouldn't be afraid to talk to their parents about any problem that they have. This is a very funny scene that works because the parents and the kids both have embarrassing moments as they go through hypothetical problems. But it's not a resolution of a story in any traditional sense. It's the smallest possible resolution. The parents notice something they need to talk to their kids about, and they talk about it. The end. People responded to this because it felt about as close to real life as a sitcom could come, even though most real-life people don't have as much money or as well-behaved kids as the Huxtables. They also responded because television always has a tendency to overplot. Too many wacky complications, too many stunning twists before the commercial break, and The Cosby Show was one of the few shows ever to dispense with all that stuff and demonstrate how unnecessary it really was. The Cosby Show's reputation has also grown, because ever since it went off the air, it's been easier to appreciate what it did in terms of representation on TV. It's well known for being a show about an upper-class family that just happened to be black, unlike The Jeffersons, which was about a family moving into a social class they never expected to be in, and a show that addressed African-American life without the usual sitcom cliches that surrounded it. However, as the most popular show on TV and the most popular ongoing series ever to feature African-American leads, it also created a fair amount of debate about whether it was too idealized or conservative. Cosby's first showrunner, Earl Pomerantz, liked the idea of him being a doctor. The network originally thought he should have a working-class job, but thought his wife being a lawyer might be status overkill. It was almost expected to stand for all of life, whereas a family sitcom can really only represent one family's status and worldview, and in this case, Cosby wanted to represent wealth, high status, and professionalism. Today, those questions may still be valid, but they're trumped by the fact that compared to modern TV, The Cosby Show seems almost too good to be true. There was a show about a black family, sometimes incorporating discussions of black history and trips to a historically black college and grandchildren named Nelson and Winnie. And it wasn't a niche show on BET, it was on NBC, and it was the most popular show in the whole world. That didn't solve problems, but just as Will and Grace did a lot to make gay rights mainstream, The Cosby Show had to wean some people off stereotypes or make some of its younger viewers less receptive to believing in stereotypes. Cosby may sometimes have been too didactic about trying to lecture kids on the right way to behave and the importance of going to college and becoming a professional. But he was right that TV is a powerful tool to influence people, and here was the most powerful show on earth presenting a functional, aspirational family that wasn't the Cleavers or the Seavers or the Keatons. The Fresh Prince of BelAir, 1990-1996. It's kind of crazy to think that The Fresh Prince of BelAir debuted all the way back in 1990, since it's still wildly popular today. Whether it's the style, the dance moves, it's cheesy, but who doesn't whip out the Carlton every now and then at a party, or even the theme song, but the show that made Will Smith a household name still has a legion of fans even today. Will was the brash, fun-loving star of The Fresh Prince of BelAir. I mean, he was the prince, after all, who always got on his Uncle Phil's nerves and liked to romance the ladies. That said, he always found a way into everybody's heart and brought his West Philadelphia charm to LA in a major way. In the last episode, Will stayed in California to finish school while everybody else pretty much left, creating an interesting close to the show. But since the series ended back in 1996, Will Smith kind of disappeared from the limelight. Just kidding. He's been everywhere since then. He had a successful rap career with DJ Jazzy Jeff both before and during the show, but he had an even bigger career after it ended, releasing the albums Big Willie Style, which went 9 times platinum, Millennium, Born to Reign, and Lost and Found. He also had a monster single on the Men in Black soundtrack, which he also starred in. In fact, some of his biggest movies during the 90s and 2000s were the aforementioned MIB and its 2 sequels, Independence Day, Bad Boys 1 and 2, The Pursuit of Happiness, I Am Legend, and pretty much every major movie produced in Hollywood for a while. If you saw a major blockbuster in the 90s and early 2000s, he was probably in it. As of late, Will Smith was the genie in Aladdin, a pigeon in Spies in Disguise, the comic book character Deadshot in Suicide Squad, and most recently reprised his role as Detective Mike Lowry in Bad Boys for Life, which is the 3rd movie in the series. A Bad Boys sequel is also in the works, and his Civil War action thriller Emancipation is on Apple TV. So yeah, he's still doing pretty well for himself, apart from, of course, the controversial Oscar slap involving comedian Chris Rock. Then there was Alfonso Ribeiro playing Carlton Banks. Carlton was the Tom Jones-loving, happy-go-lucky son of Philip Banks, who had his head on his shoulders but also knew how to break it down and sing into a hairbrush every now and then. He had a love-hate relationship with Will, but in the end, they became good friends. In the last episode, he went to Princeton because he was also a Mr. Smarty Pants. Alfonso Ribeiro himself has been keeping busy. He's still making people laugh as the current host of ABC's America's Funniest Home Videos. He directed numerous episodes for shows like Meet the Browns, Are We There Yet?, and Casey Undercover. And he also participated and won season 19 of Dancing with the Stars with Whitney Carson. As of late, he also sued Epic Games for using his Carlton dance in the game Fortnite, but ultimately dropped the suit. Then, there was Karen Parsons playing Hillary Banks. Hillary was the drama queen diva of the show, who often looked down upon people without money. Still, she got along well with Will, even better than he did with Carlton, and even had her own daytime talk show simply titled Hillary. In the last episode of the series, she moved to New York since that's where her show was moved to. As an actress, Karen Parsons' last gig was in a short film in 2017 called On Monday of Last Week. Other than acting, she recently published her first middle-grade novel in 2019, titled How High the Moon, about a girl growing up in Jim Crow South. Other cast members included Tatiana Ali, Janet Hubert, Daphne Maxwell Reid, Joseph Marcel, and the late James Avery. To this day, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air has a long legacy and an unbelievable fan base. It's good to know that most of the actors are still staying busy and seem to be happy. Living Single, 1993-1998. The 1990s legendary sitcom Living Single recently celebrated its 30th anniversary, paving the way for the late 90s and early 2000s sitcoms Sex and the City and Girlfriends, and later 2010 sitcoms Insecure and Sistas. Living Single was the premier television show with all black female leads. Created by then-upcoming executive producer Yvette Lee Bowser, the show ran for 5 years, from 1993 to 1998. With an ensemble cast, the show centered on 6 friends living in a Brooklyn brownstone and going through the ups and downs of life. Bowser remembers the exact day Living Single was green-lighted to premiere in the fall 1993 TV season. "I was actually at a hair appointment," she told NBC News, laughing. "As a black woman, that's fitting." "It was May 10, 1993, she said. "I got a phone call telling me that the show was getting picked up for another 12 episodes in addition to the pilot. I called my mother first, and then I called my girlfriends," she said. "You know that show that I wrote about? It's actually going to be on TV. I'm not going to just be sitting at home in my robe watching the one episode over and over and over again." Living Single premiered 3 months later on August 22, 1993, and it marked its 30th anniversary last year. The legendary show ran for 5 seasons on Fox and starred Queen Latifah, Kim Coles, Erica Alexander, T.C. Carson, John Henton, and Kim Fields as Khadijah, Sinclair, Max, Kyle, Overton, and Regine, respectively. They lived in Brooklyn, New York, as working professionals navigating the roller coaster of their careers, friendships, and romantic lives. The show is available to stream on Hulu and Max. Even after 30 years, clips from the show regularly trend on social media. Most recently, the final scene of the series finale trended on TikTok with almost 3 million views when fans discovered that Khadijah whispered an additional line after her actual line. Clips of the title sequence and theme song continue to make the rounds online, as does the quartet of women breaking out into song in the bathroom, using brushes and toilet bowl cleaners as microphones. If not full clips, there are, of course. Also, gifs of Regine are posted whenever someone is acting bougie, or some of Sinclair whenever someone is whimsically innocent. Traits those characters are known for. Living Single has become a classic sitcom, and Bowser said that's just how the circle of love works. "I wanted to create a series that centered on and celebrated women," she said. "When you create something that is intended to be a love letter, and you pour love into it over time, what I've found is that you continue to get love back over an extended and unexpected period of time." As a result, Bowser said, "Cultural impact is the show's legacy. We didn't just set out to make a TV show," she said. "We set out to make a universally entertaining but culturally specific experience, and I think we achieved that." She said the fact that it still lands with people is a credit to the audience for watching and popularizing the show. "You don't get to decide what's going to resonate with the audience," she said. "The audience decides. And I believe over the last 3 decades, they've decided that it's been significant for them, that it's been life-changing for many, it's been inspirational. And that's incredibly rewarding and affirming as a writer, creator, and just as a black woman in society." Bowser said the Living Single team remains in touch and are all in a group chat in which they chat it up and chop it up on that thread pretty frequently. "We're still true blue, tight like glue," she said, referring to lyrics in the theme song. "It's not just a title, it's a spirit, it's a thing. For us, it's not just a moment, it's a movement. It's an energy that we carry with us as a group, which is really beautiful." The show's creator said her goal all along was to be intentional and stick to her convictions. It nearly cost her the show. They really enjoyed the characters, but they asked me to lose Maxine from the show, she remembered. Yes, this incredibly daring, beautiful, confident, unapologetic black feminist was apparently intimidating on paper. Bowser said she refused their request because Max is an idealized version of her. Taking Maxine out of the show would be taking a big part of me out of the show, and I'd rather not do the show at all, she remembers telling the studios. So there I was, 27 years old with the opportunity to have my own TV show on the line, and I was willing to risk it. I was literally becoming Maxine while I was in the process of creating her. The creative compromise was to move Max, who initially lived with Khadijah, Sinclair, and Regine, across the street into her own apartment. But like any close friend, she was regularly at their apartment, eating their food and taking up space just the same. Bowser said Max's enemy-turned-love interest, Kyle, and his best friend Overton are based on her husband, Kyle Bowser, and his best friend in real life, Overton Wilkins. About the show, think of Friends but with an all-black cast. That is Living Single. The laughs are plentiful, even if the gusto behind the jokes was not always appreciated at the time. 6 friends, a couple of strangers, a few relatives, and with a touch of new blood sprinkled in for good measure. A Different World, 1987-1993. While The Cosby Show spin-off A Different World, a series that focused on the lives of multiple students at the fictional, historically black Hillman College in Virginia, has gone down as being one of the greatest black sitcoms of all time, there was a time when it was one of the most culturally relevant shows on the small screen, primarily for black youth and young adults. During its 6-season run from 1987 to 1993, A Different World expertly navigated issues like the growing AIDS epidemic, rape, homelessness, love, and the inner turmoil that young black people were facing at the time. When the racial tension in Los Angeles exploded into a wildfire of riots following the Rodney King verdict, there was no way for A Different World to not address it. So in their 2-part season 6 premiere, which aired roughly 6 months following the riots, Allen and company tackled the topic head-on with Honeymoon in LA. The way in was an easy one. Season 5's cliffhanger was the surprise and long-awaited marriage of Dwayne Wayne and Whitley Gilbert. Their honeymoon was a trip to Los Angeles, cruising the streets in a pink Cadillac while checking out the many sights. The 2-parter found Dwayne and Whitley telling the story of their honeymoon to the students and faculty, returning to Hillman College, aka the place they fell in love and spent most of their early adult lives growing up. At the time, the show's writers knew they had to dig into this story in the series. A Different World head writer and executive producer Susan Fales told the LA Times, "Dealing with this is expected of us, and we knew we had to do it." And what they chose to do was have Whitley and Dwayne rolling down the street as the Rodney King verdict was being announced. That moment opened itself up to a conversation between the newlyweds, with Whitley thinking the result, guilty, 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 was obvious primarily because this wasn't 1965 in Selma, Alabama, and that white salespeople taking their money during their extravagant shopping spree was equal to progress. Dwayne begged to differ, reminding his wife that most black folk never get a chance to test your theory. After being split up during an argument regarding what they would be doing next on their trip, the newlyweds decided to split up, just as the riots were about to hit. Whitley, lost on foot in Beverly Hills, at one point had to act like a mannequin in a department store in fear that the looters would attack her. In a surprising twist, that shop was not only frequented by Tom and Roseanne Arnold, but also a number of white women who took advantage of the riots to grab all of the bikinis and tennis skirts that they desired. It's interesting to point out that in a pre-social media era, Debbie Allen purposefully wanted to highlight a side of the riots that you wouldn't see on television, something that we are still struggling with today. Meanwhile, Dwayne was in South Central, getting caught up outside of a convenience store mid-looting and trying to get directions back to Beverly Hills. A conversation with one man leads to a squad of looters filling his caddy up with stolen goods before an argument with the convenience store owner brings the death of Latasha Harlins into the conversation. One of the most important moments in the episode featured Sister Solja, who at the time was mostly known for her work with Public Enemy, but has since grown into multiple roles as an author, activist, and film producer. In May 1992, an interview with The Washington Post took a comment she made out of context. "If black people kill black people every day, why not have a week and kill white people?" Causing a firestorm that had her even catching flack from then-presidential candidate Bill Clinton clapping at her. Soulja's comment was really about the mentality of a gang member who's already killing people that look like him or her, might have no issue with turning violence against other races, especially in the powder keg that was Los Angeles at the time.
Soulja was allowed to kick knowledge to Whitley when many people found out about the verdict, delivering an impactful speech about this being the time to start thinking about the community they were building. For those who remember, the 6th season of A Different World would be its last. There was always talk about what caused NBC to cancel the program, and on a 2015 episode of TV1's Unsung Hollywood, the cast revealed that NBC was not happy with the more controversial Read Political episodes being created, primarily stemming from their Season 6 LA Riots two-parter. Prior to the episode airing, there was a real concern, especially from those in the black community in Los Angeles, about how a sitcom could appropriately depict such a troubling situation. Danny Bakewell, who was the director of the Brotherhood Crusade, opened up to the LA Times. "What I would be cautious about is whether the show deals with the rebellion or the substance that led to the rebellion. Truth be told, the 6th season wasn't as acclaimed as previous ones in the comedy department, but you have to give it up for A Different World, not only taking on the riots, but also being vocal about the 1992 presidential election, which started with numerous talks about students registering to vote in Honeymoon in LA. Oddly enough, in January 1992, Dwayne dropped this gem of a speech regarding racial bias that was not only hyper-relevant then, but still resonates 3 years later. Had A Different World gotten too woke for its own good? It's possible. This was a time when the voiceless had primetime television slots to be heard by the masses, and instead of towing company lines, Debbie Allen and the cast and crew of A Different World took the bull by the horns and found a way to educate while entertaining. Honeymoon in LA was a necessary episode to make, and while it ultimately was the beginning of the end for this revolutionary sitcom, fighting the power was a must. Martin, 1992-1997. For 5 seasons in the mid-90s, Martin was appointment viewing for sitcom fans, part of a wave of black comedies that anchored network lineups and developed major stars like Will Smith and Queen Latifah. Martin was so popular that it drew viewers away from NBC's powerhouse Thursday night lineup, lifting Fox to new heights in the ratings. Martin Lawrence played the title character, Martin Payne, who started on the series as a DJ for the fictional Detroit radio station WZUP and later became the host of a TV show on Channel 51. Martin's motor mouth and selfishness drove many of the show's plots, as he often had to find a way to solve the problems he created for his long-suffering girlfriend Gina, played by Tisha Campbell, friends Tommy played by Thomas McCall Ford, and Cole, played by Carl Anthony Payne II, and arch-enemy Pam, played by Tichina Arnold. Lawrence also created and portrayed an array of memorable characters who would show up at his apartment or around town, including Shanae Jenkins, Mama Payne, Otis, the security guard, and Jerome, the pimp. The show featured a cavalcade of catchphrases that still resonate with fans, from "Waz up" to "Damn Gina" to "Oh my goodness." The laughs turned serious in 1997, however, when Campbell accused Lawrence of sexual harassment and verbal assault, leading to her absence in most of the final season, and an awkward end to the show in which Lawrence and Campbell never appeared in any scenes together, despite their characters moving to Los Angeles to pursue their careers. However, Lawrence and Campbell appear to have put their issues behind them, as seen in The Martin, the reunion special, which aired on BET Plus in 2022. Martin Lawrence was already an established comedian and had priorly appeared in projects like What's Happening Now and 1990's House Party, when he had his first breakthrough as the host of HBO's groundbreaking Def Comedy Jam.
Lawrence capitalized on his sitcom success by joining forces with Michael Bay and Will Smith in 1995's Bad Boys, starting a run of box office hits that made him a household name even after Martin was over. Lawrence, though, had a couple of disturbing episodes that sidetracked his career, including waving a gun in the middle of a busy LA street in 1996 and suffering a near-fatal coma from heat exhaustion in 1999. He returned to TV on 2014's short-lived Partners, and in 2020, he reunited with Smith for Bad Boys for Life, a critical and financial success. Lawrence also starred in the B-movie thriller Mind Cage in 2022, and just like Lawrence, Campbell was already well known in Hollywood when she landed the Martin role of Gina. She had been acting and singing since she was a child, appearing at 17 in the 1986 film version of Little Shop of Horrors and the only in the 80s musical dramedy Rags to Riches. Other early film work included appearances in the House Party film series, School Days in 1988, Another 48 Hours in 1990, and Boomerang in 1992. After her run on Martin, Campbell steadily appeared on TV, including stints on My Wife and Kids, All of Us, Dr. Ken, Empire, and Uncoupled. She's also continued to pursue music, releasing a single 22 Summers in 2019. Campbell works consistently in TV movies and voiceover projects, including Harley Quinn and Inside Job. Then there is Tichina Arnold. When Arnold landed the role of no-nonsense Pam on Martin, she too was an industry vet, having appeared alongside Campbell in Little Shop of Horrors and earned a Daytime Emmy nomination for her work on the soap Ryan's Hope. She also acted on All My Children from 1990 to 1991. In the aftermath of Martin, Arnold maintained a steady pace of work, appearing regularly on the series One-on-One before starring as the matriarch on the hit CW show Everybody Hates Chris, beginning in 2005. Since 2018, Arnold has been plying her trade on CBS's series The Neighborhood alongside Cedric the Entertainer, although she has found time to appear in films like The Last Black Man in San Francisco, Countdown in 2019, and The Main Event in 2020. Other cast members included Carl Anthony Payne, Thomas Michael Ford, John Grease, Garrett Morris, and Tracy Morgan. Family Matters, 1989-1998. Family Matters will most likely go down in history for its breakout character, Steve Urkel, played by Jaleel White, but it offered plenty more in terms of laughs and screenwriting takeaways for sitcom writers. As one of the longest-running American sitcoms with a mainly black cast, the Friday night staple was part of ABC's TGIF lineup for an incredible 9-season run from 1989 to 1998, the final year of which it moved to CBS. Not bad for a spin-off. The Winslows were a middle-class black family in Chicago, Illinois, and Family Matters covered everything that went along with that. It was a family show with a sitcom structure, covering topics and themes relevant to teenage kids dealing with high school drama, working parents, and what it meant to be a cop in Chicago, handling all of them by zeroing in on the moral lesson therein, with a few laughs on the side. The show did arguably outlive its funny, rehashing its own hooks, usually in the form of Steve Urkel as Stefan or his cousin Myrtle Urkel, and was not above sight gags. But it also provided a fun-to-watch blueprint for sitcom structure, with escalating complications that would resolve in the third act, usually by way of a heart-to-heart. Family Matters began its run centered around the heart of the home. Harriet Winslow, played by Jo Marie Payton, and later Judy Ann Elder, a character featured on another ABC sitcom, Perfect Strangers. Her great morale and quick-witted humor have been cited as reasons for creating the whole Winslow clan to surround this powerhouse female character. Though she had a job, her role as a mother was most important and the anchor for the show's family-first theme. Overall, the show evolved to play into its biggest hook, Urkel, the ridiculously smart nerd next door in love with the Winslows' eldest and only daughter, Laura. What was intended to be a guest role on one episode turned into the series' biggest moneymaker. Physical comedy underscored every move Urkel made. The takeaway here is don't underestimate the power of nerds and science, or more aptly, crafting layered and phenomenal characterizations for even the smallest roles can have a lasting effect on your story at large. While its neighbors on the TGIF programming block dealt with family configurations of all kinds, Family Matters focused on its nuclear members and those it adopted organically. The goofy neighbor, the suddenly widowed aunt, and inner city boy whom Urkel mentors. The Winslows solved everything that came at them through family first. No matter what that looked like in terms of actual family members, the core of it meant simply being there for one another. Most episodes, like most sitcoms of the time, featured the living room as its epicenter. While it was technically a result of taping in front of a live studio audience, it's hard not to acknowledge its family room meaning as well. Episode storylines also alternated between light-hearted relationship issues and Urkel debacles to heavier ones such as race and gun violence, sadly still unavoidable topics today, 2 decades after the show went off the air. In Season 5, older brother Eddie, played by Darius McCrary, is harassed by police after driving through a white neighborhood, and gang violence makes Laura, played by Kelly Shanina Williams, consider buying a gun in Season 6. These are heavy topics for TGIF, but relevant with important messaging for its young audience, and thus delivered with care by the show's writers. Family Matters can easily be described as wholesome entertainment. It is literally about family matters, delivered with impeccable comedic timing thanks to its talented cast. Yes, it had its quirks. Characters were written off without nary a mention again, like an entire younger sibling who was around for 4 whole seasons, something that probably wouldn't fly with today's audiences. But if you were one of the characters lucky enough to make it to the end, and a true fan to stick it out to the final episode, you also got to finally witness, after all those years of shooting him out of the house, Carl telling Urkel, "Welcome home, son." After Urkel returns from his turn as an astronaut, yup, that happened too, and finally gets his girl and the family that goes with her. So, which one of these shows was your favorite? Let us know in the comment section below, and that's it from us today until next time. Thank you for watching.